Chapter 1. Take Home Away. The door jiggled, a sound of jangling metal, then the lock clicked. It swung open. The black door moved away from the portal between the outside world and the inside home, revealing one female. She was small, with a tiny frame to match. The girl looked about 15. She shambled into the apartment, turning around and shutting the door. She turned the lock. A click, then silence. The girl moved further inside, instantly making a beeline for a small black couch. Her black shoes made no noise against the white carpet as she silently marched across. The girl stopped when she was in front of the couch, breathing in. Strawberries. A delicious, albeit quite unreal, scent. She exhaled under her breath before collapsing onto the couch. The cushions softened her fall. A paper fell from her pocket. It had a picture of her on the front, holding a set of 3 books in hand. Book signing, September 18th. Come and meet Val Reaper, writer of the Fighters Within book series. Get your book signed, ask questions at your local Barnes & Noble. She sighed silently, her hands cramping a little. The girl whimpered faintly as she sat up. Her hands hurt. That was common after a book signing. I just want to relax, she muttered, rolling off of her couch. Her back hit the carpet harshly, a pang of pain flashing in her mind's eye. She hissed as she stood up. Something to relax. Get rid of the idea of the strawberries. She stumbled to her video cabinet, finding an old but enjoyable movie. Transformers, Michael Bay's version. It wasn't a well-written series, but it was interesting, nonetheless. Well, as her mom would have put it, it's a guy flick. She smiled faintly. The dim sunlight through her windows reflected off the disc's box as Val opened it. Inside, forever embedded, was a picture of Optimus Prime on the disc. Val picked out the disc, scooting left and tapping the disc tray open button with her foot. She leaned down as it opened and placed the disc inside. This would be a good way to unwind. Thank the Lord. Val picked up a remote from the TV stand and wandered back to her couch, falling down on top of it. She turned to face the big TV as it turned on, revealing the opening screen for the Transformers Bayverse movie. She turned on English subtitles, making the audio English as well. Val giggled a little at the stupidity of having to do that all the time, unless she wanted to annoy her neighbors. Here we go. Val hit play. The movie started up. It was nearly laughable how terrible it was. But Val just watched, every now and then commenting on characters and their stupidity. It was such a childish movie, despite being rated as PG-13. She was interrupted halfway through the movie by a vibration in her pocket. Val pulled out her phone from her right pocket, reading over what had happened. Valma Correta. Glad to see you're doing okay, Valma. Love you. 5:23 p.m. Valma smiled a little, unlocking her phone. You. Thanks, Dad. Love you too. 5:24 p.m. She returned to her movie. Valma gasped when Bumblebee transformed into a Camaro, although it was more in a mocking tone than anything else. His pride's been injured! Quick, call the police! Valma stopped, breathing in to continue her rant. His ego's Breathe in again. Okay. Worrying. Valma focused on her body for a moment, breathing. Her lungs were just barely filling with air, enough to keep her awake and alive. Slowly, a burning pain took over her system. It hurt. It hurt so much. Why did it hurt? Velma's eyes widened in shock as she felt the air pushing out of her lungs, none returning to them. Valma wanted to scream. She couldn't. She tried lifting her arms, her legs, talking, anything. Nothing. Her eyes darted around, landing on the TV as she suffocated on her couch. Valma couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She couldn't... anything. It... can't breathe. Can't. Valma tried to think. It was getting harder. So much more hard. Lungs. Can't. Valma stared at the TV as her vision slowly began to darken. She didn't want that. The movie glitched before skipping. Before her, on the TV, stood a certain Autobot leader. Fate rarely calls upon us at a moment of our choosing. I don't want to... Valma could breathe. Just barely. She was catching her breath. Her nose was pressed against something. She shot her eyes open, staring. She was on top of none other than Sam Witwicky. His eyes were locked onto her, and he wasn't breathing. Valma wanted to scream, but she didn't have the lung capacity yet. All that came out was a slight squeak. She smelled sulfur. The girl could only watch in horror as Sam Witwicky screeched, his pale skin and clothes, an entire self getting pulled apart before her eyes. Within seconds, the floor was blank as Valma finished her crash to the floor. She stared down at it. It was white tile, marble. Valma could only think of a few places that it reminded her of, and the very first one was a place she didn't want to be at. Yo, Sam! Some guy held out his hand to Valma. She silently stood up of her own accord. What the... Bro, seriously? The male questioned. He was that odd kid from the movie. Sam's friend, who Valma could swear was a stoner. Seriously. Valma could feel an intense weight on her back and one strap over either arm. A backpack. What sick dream was this? The bell rang. Frick! Valma cursed internally, walking down the halls. She felt several well-placed items hit against her back. Were those what she thought they were? No, way! No! Her eyes scanned each room as she passed it, before spotting the one she recalled from the movie's scene. She could see Michaela, Sam's love interest, with her current boyfriend, and the teacher that didn't like Sam. Okay, she could come up with a speech on the spot. Shouldn't be too hard. She knocked on the door. The halls were filled with blue-green lockers, a few clocks on the ceilings. The room Valma looked into was dirty, the students all lackadaisically sitting in their chairs as only one or two paid attention to the speaker up front. The white walls were filled with history posters and papers, so presumably that's why Sam always appeared with a speech about his great-grandfather. Oh no, Valma would have to do his speech. Wait, why would she? The door opened. Samantha Witwicky, you're late. The teacher groused from his seat. He was a stereotypical history teacher, with a nasally voice and glasses on his face. His hair was neatly combed, and he was in a decent white work shirt with a black tie. He pointed towards a desk, presumably Sam's, and glared at Valma. Sit! A few students chuckled, one actually tossing a balled-up paper ball at Valma. She blinked, looking down and then up. The teacher was not happy with her, but she could teach a few adolescents some respect. Valma grinned. Thanks, whoever threw that. When I find you later, and I will, don't worry, you'll be flayed alive for your transgressions. Still, thanks for the paper. She smiled brightly throughout, sitting down in her chair after checking it. If these kids bullied Sam, for sure they'd bully her. Sam had disappeared. She had been called Samantha Witwicky. It wasn't too hard to guess what had happened. Valma silently knew this had to be a dream, nothing more. Why she hadn't woken up was beyond her. The teacher stared at her for a moment. "Are you okay, Sam?" Valma nodded. "Yes, sir." The teacher blinked in surprise, before shaking his head. He nodded to the current speaker to continue his speech. Valma inhaled under her breath, pulling out the paper ball and silently unraveling it. It was blank. Duh. She rolled her eyes. Kids. Hopefully, this dream would be over soon. Someone pinched her. Valma didn't react beyond turning her head to her left. It was that guy who bullied Sam. "Hey, Sam, about time you grew a pair." He chuckled, high-fiving one of his friends. Valma quirked an eyebrow. Her sass meter silently went from 1 to 10. "At least I have a pair, unlike a certain boy in here." She gestured vaguely to the guy, turning her head back to the front of the class. The speaker stuttered out some finish to his speech, the teacher sighing as he gave a little criticism. "B+, Thomas. You stuttered near the end, though. Take a seat. Stacy," he called out. Another girl who looked similar to Valma walked up, her hands containing nothing. She stood before the class and began speaking, while Valma listened to the kids around her. "Did you hear that? Samantha just roasted someone." "No way." "Shut up." The kid she had been sassy towards. Valma returned her attention to the speaker. Hopefully, hope and pray, that pinch had felt real. No, it was a lucid dream. Had to be. "Samantha, you're up," the teacher commanded, his gaze narrowing in on Valma. She blinked, standing up. Her backpack was still hanging from her back. She'd have to be careful about this. She walked to the front, a confident air to her step and countenance. This wouldn't be the first time she'd done public speaking on the fly. Valma got to the podium, shrugging off her backpack. She proceeded to unzip it, pulling out each item of Archibald Witwicky's that she had. They were all faded with age, but Samantha at least knew the importance of a few of the items. She had his old compass, dusty and cracked with age. The next item was a telescope of sorts, the lens blurry and scratched from ages gone by. There was a set of glasses. Valma left those in the bag, pulling out some odd device that looked like faded gold. It was a sort of triangle on an arch. She could only assume it was used to draw curved lines on maps. She placed all three on the podium before moving to stand beside it. Time to see how well my abilities have progressed. My great-grandfather, Archibald Witwicky, knew what it meant to have sacrifice and victory. He fought tooth and nail to explore the Arctic Circle, the first of his time to do so, and he discovered something extraordinary. Valma began, drawing from what she recalled. He had about 30 men with him, and drove their ship straight into an Arctic shelf. The temperatures were below freezing, ice solidifying around their boat faster than they could break it. The scenes Valma spoke of flashed behind her eyes, each moment recalled and remembered. She would thank the Lord for this memory one day, she swore. Imagine that you were amongst those brave men. The brunette gestured to her audience, her classmates. A few actually sat up and paid a little more attention. She picked up the telescope, holding it in one hand. You're freezing, the world around you a cold and Arctic wasteland. But do you give in? She smiled. No, You braved the darkness, with Sir Archibald Witwicky at the helm. She held the telescope up to her eye. You explore the unknown, seeking that which no man dares believe. Valma lowered the telescope, placing it on the podium. She picked up the compass. Following the lines and trails of age-old stories dared not to be trusted. Straight into the iron jaws of the cold. You seek something new. She paused. But your leader leads you into an Arctic shelf. Your ship gets frozen, stuck in place. You and your crew try so desperately, so hopelessly, to break the ice, to return home. Her voice took on a dark, melancholy tinge. All the while, you hear one relentless chant from your leader. Remember the motto, men. No sacrifice, no victory. Valma trailed off for a moment, looking at the audience. My great-grandfather, Archibald Witwicky, gave the ultimate sacrifice to discover what lay in the Arctic Circle. He went insane, drawing symbols and hieroglyphics in some insane ward somewhere, telling tale of an Iceman he found buried in the snow. Valma looked at her audience, a grim smile crossing her face. He discovered something amazing at the cost of his own sanity. Valma put the compass down slowly, looking at it wistfully for a moment. Hopefully, it was decent enough. A few of the kids seemed to be staring at her with stars in their eyes, fully enraptured by her tale. A few others looked mildly interested, while that bully from before and his presumed friends looked bored out of their skulls. One of them crinkled some paper into a ball before tossing it at Valma. She raised her free hand, her right, and caught it. Hey, what does this sign say? The teacher growled out, picking up a sign that said silence. I told you all not to throw paper in my class. There might be a quiz tomorrow over the vocabulary because of that. The bell rang. Students rolled their eyes, picking up their bags and vacating the room speedily. Valma glanced to the clock. 3:15 p.m. Now, Samantha. The teacher spoke gently while Valma packed her bag back up. She sneakily pulled out the glasses of Archibald Witwicky, clutching them in her hands as she hid them in her left pocket in front of her wallet. Yes? Valma responded, zipping her bag up and slinging it over her shoulders. The teacher glared a little at her, before sighing in defeat. That wasn't too horrible. A-. Valma smiled brightly. Thank you, sir. She bowed a little, hearing the object slide along Sam's backpack. Valma straightened back up, before darting out of the classroom. Now came another issue. Her father and getting a car. This isn't a dream, is it?